people for this session. The main one here is to answer about where dinosaurs fit in with the Bible. And part of that is in this creation answer book that I mentioned earlier. And I'm going to go through several chapters of this, even in my first talk, about which are found there. And I think you'll find a lot of the questions that come up are actually found in this book. So that I think you'll see what a worthwhile book it is. Now, what about dinosaurs? I mean, in fact, the Bible is enough to explain the history, even though that surprises a lot of people. Now, first of all, before I start, I'd like to define terms, okay? Dinosaurs are a very specific type of extinct animal, and one thing that's distinct about them is their leg structure, the column-like legs, and this process from the thigh bone here into the hip socket, which is actually uniquely hollowed. Unlike other creatures which have a filled-in hip socket, their three bones join there, it's called the acetabulum, which means little vinegar cup in the back. And okay, the dinosaurs have a hollow thing there, which is actually one of the unique features, and the femur sticks into that, so it means that their legs can move in the vertical plane. See, reptiles living today don't have that. See, crocodiles and the Komodo dragon, the other lizards are not correctly referred to as dinosaurs because they have a completely different leg structure. And it's also not correct to refer to the pterosaurs as flying dinosaurs. Again, leg structure is different. Okay, so I'd like to use correct terminology if I can. Now let's go to the Bible as the history book of our universe. And here is where it tells you when dinosaurs existed, because dinosaurs were made on day 6 of creation week. According to the Bible, that's when the beasts of the earth were made, day 6. That must include dinosaurs, logically, but also humans were made on day 6, which means logically humans and dinosaurs must have lived at the same time. You can't escape that. That's what the Bible tells us. I know evolutionists believe dinosaurs died out 66 million years ago. I don't think that can't be right. Now, one question that comes up then is, if dinosaurs lived with humans, why don't we find the fossils together? So here it's important to get behind that question. The assumption behind that question is, if things live together, then they will be fossilized together. But is this true? Well, clearly not, because here's an example in the foreground we have a fish called the coelacanth. And they thought it died out with the dinosaurs because of where it's found in the fossil record. But of course we know it's alive and well today. Now in the background we have a whale flipper. So clearly, whales and coelacanths live in the sea together, but they're not found fossilized together. So it just shows that just because things live together, it doesn't guarantee they will be fossilized together. So it's important to understand that the fossil record is not a record of ages, it's a record of burial, mostly by the God of Noah's day, which began in the ocean, found in the Great Deep. So is it surprising that 95% of fossils are shellfish? And the next things are the fish, because the flood began in the sea, so it's going to bury fish. And then you're going to have things like the things on the border between land and sea, the amphibians, the water and on land. So that's the next thing to be fossilized. So what we're seeing is a record of burial of different ecosystems. Now, when it comes to dinosaurs, we should really have no doubt that dinosaurs exist because we have the fossils. They show that dinosaurs once walked the earth, and they are the biggest ever land creatures, like the Brachiosaurus here. It's an enormous creature, much bigger than anything we see today. I mean, compared to the giraffe, the Brachiosaurus is much, much bigger. And it's interesting to see how tiny a human is compared to this gigantic creature. Now, it had some design features which are interesting. Some of the design features we know because we've got the record of the bones. And that includes these cervical ribs, which are just tendons that have become quite hard. And what they actually do is to dampen vibration. Because you think of something, a head up there, it could set off resonant vibration. You know about sometimes the bridges can actually sway and collapse if they've got the resonant frequency. Well, these ribs actually cancel out that vibration. Just the right sort of length to cancel out that resonant vibration. Another thing is they're hollowed out for lightweight. And when you look at the backs, it's interesting to see how arched they are. The arch is actually a very good engineering design. If you think of the bridges that are shaped like arches, the arch provides the strength, and the ancient Romans knew about the arch as a great source of strength. You see how the cables are supporting the road underneath it. And this is what we have with the dinosaur, the arch and the ribs being supported by that arch. Again, a good engineering design. Now, some things that we don't know about is unfortunately we haven't got the soft parts in a lot of cases. When you think about giraffe, you see giraffe with such a tall head, it has to have a very powerful heart to keep the blood pressure. See, the blood pressure of a giraffe is 300 over 180. When you think about what human blood pressure is supposed to be, 120 over 80 is sort of the normal blood pressure. A human with 180 blood pressure, that's an emergency hypertension. Go to the hospital, dangerous, okay? But a giraffe is 300 over 180. See, they need that extra blood pressure to go up that high. And they also need to have some shunts in case when what happens, they come to drink water, they could blow their brains out unless they have blood vessels shunting off that pressure, you see. And their legs, the fascia in their legs that surround the muscle act as pressure bands to squeeze the blood out of the heart. See, these are things we know the giraffe has. We don't know what the brackets all have, but we know it must have been something. In fact, they estimate the blood pressure of a brachiosaur must have been about 600 to 700. And what else did it have? We just don't know. It's quite intriguing to think about what it must have had. Some amazing design features that we may never know. Okay, what's the biggest dinosaur then? Well, that's an intriguing question because of the fragmentary remains we have of a lot of them. See, one claimant is this thing called the Amphicelius fragilis. And it's an off-the-charts enormous dinosaur. But what was actually it based on? Well, here we go. The black is the outline of reconstructed, and it's actually the white that's the bone we found. That's all we found. A single broken vertebra. Now the Diplodocus is a different story. That's actually the longest dinosaur we know from a very complete skeleton. See, here's a human here, if you notice carefully. We've got most of the bones in the body. We actually got a good idea what it looked like. You see, the Brachiosaurus is probably the heaviest dinosaur we know from almost a complete skeleton. But when you think of some of these other dinosaurs that are supposed to be really, really hard and huge, we're missing so much. And it's very serious if we're missing the tail and the neck, which is a distinguishing feature of that type of dinosaur called a sauropod. Sauropod, long necks, long tails. If we're missing the long neck and long tail bones, we really are guessing a lot about what they really look like. And also the problem is, it's a broken vertebra, not really complete vertebra, it's a one broken vertebra, and we've lost it, it's been lost. It's a problem called the fragilis, because it's so fragile, it's gone. So we can't go back unless you see what it looked like, because it's not there anymore. So I think the biggest dinosaur we know from a majority of skeleton is probably this thing called the Photolonchosaurus. It's not a typo, I promise. And we actually know his ribs are very flared out, his hip bone was 10 feet across, 3 meters or 10 feet across. That's how big the hip bone was, and the ribs are really flared out. We got most of the neck. We haven't got the tail or the legs, though. That's all we're guessing it. Well, this thing here called the Dreadnoughtus, which has a very good skeleton. Really got a lot of the legs, almost all the tail, the body, and some of the neck bones. And the original estimate was 65 metric tons, 65 tons, but they've downgraded that by about half or a third of that. Okay? But one interesting distinction here is from these tail bones, you can tell they had very powerful muscles. And the discoverers said that this thing had a weaponized tail 30 feet long. Very powerful weapon that tail would have been, with such powerful muscles powering it. Now bear in mind, just remember weaponized tail. Because then I want to ask why the word dinosaur is not in the Bible. Well, I'll tell you, the word dinosaur is a very recent word. I mean, think of the King James Bible, originally 1611. The King James Bible you're familiar with is the 1769 edition, okay? But the word dinosaur didn't get invented until 1841. So it's a very recent word. In fact, the word dinosaur is older than the word calculator. I mean, some of you guys might be old enough to remember when you had to use slide rules and log books instead of calculators, right? Remember? Yeah, okay. So, but calculator actually goes back to the 14th century. So the word calculator is a much older word than dinosaur. So that puts it into perspective. Of course, the King James Bible is not going to have a word like dinosaur where it didn't exist. So they had to make some best guesses about certain creatures, like this creature that you see in the book of Job. Just look at it. Look at your Francis tie, next time you can shake hands with it, Francis tie, you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, so here we've got real animals. Another place is real animals. God is giving Job a creation list. Here's some animals on it. Okay? But then he gets to Job 40 and you have this creature called Behemoth. Now Behemoth is not an English word, it's a Hebrew word. They didn't know what it meant, so that's the Hebrew word. I'll tell you something we know about it, because the word Behemoth, singular, means a beast. Behemoth is the plural, beasts. So Behemoth is the beast of beasts. It's the greatest creature God has made. That's why it's got the plural there. It's the plural of the intensity, the beast of beasts. It's the great beast. And it's a plant eater. One thing that's interesting about it, the translations tell you it has a tail stitched like a cedar. It's comparing the tail of this creature to a cedar, which is the biggest tree in the area. Now here's what a cedar looks like. It's a big tree, right? Now there are other comparisons with a cedar, and they're all emphasizing how big something was, how magnificent, enormous the thing was. That's why it's compared to a cedar. So some study Bibles say, well, this was probably a hippopotamus or an elephant. Honestly, an elephant with a tail like a cedar, really? Now, what about a hippo? It doesn't make any sense, but here is another suggestion. That's actually quite an interesting thing, because when you look at the, remember I told you to remember this, Dread Mortis with the weaponized 30-foot long tail. That, I'd say, a tail like a cedar perfectly describes a creature like this. It does not describe an elephant or a hippo. So the behemoth was almost certainly a sauropod dinosaur with the weaponized tail that was, you can be able to see that's how amazing it was. Now that's another thing to think about, because there are human records which are quite intriguing, which seem to indicate that humans did see creatures we now call dinosaurs. They didn't call dinosaurs back then. Often they were called dragons instead. But this is actually almost certainly a stegosaurus type thing. A stegosaur, that's the only thing with these distinctive plates. And they match the plates, the arrangement we think they had. So when they first discovered a stegosaur, they thought that the plates were flattened down on the back to protect it. But in fact, the more modern thing that the plates are up like this. It's either solar, sort of solar heaters to warm the blood, or radiators, or maybe it's displayed for display. We don't really know, but this is what they think it looked like. Another thing, a word we had is dragon. Now the Chinese calendar has 12 undoubted animals, and they have the dragon, but the dragon's just another animal in this calendar. It's not a special mythical animal, it's just another animal. And when you look at the Chinese word, it's long, but it's interesting, the word for dinosaur is Kong Long, which means terrible dinosaur, which is a terrible dragon, which is what the English word dinosaur means terrible reptile, terrible lizard, but the Chinese word means terrible dragon. And then we also have things like this. Now you can find more about these carvings, drawings, statues, but this book called Untold Secrets of Planet Earth called Dire Dragon is a very nice coffee table book which has very well documented pictures of dragons, and then has an evolutionary paleontologist reconstruct what a dinosaur that looked like these. Quite interesting to see reconstructed pictures of known dinosaurs, but comparing with what they had. Now, when the dinosaurs, what happened to them? I think one thing is they must have been buried really quickly, because you have fossils like this one, the fighting dinosaurs. It's very interesting. So it means rapid burial, but also they've found a lot of soft tissue in dinosaur bones. Very intriguing for things that died out over 60 million years ago, and still finding soft tissue, blood cells, blood vessels, and even animal proteins like collagen, actin, and even some DNA and intact cells have been found in dinosaur bones. And this is just unbelievable if they've been there that long. And the leading discoverer, Dr. Mary Schweitzer, who's an evolutionist, was on 60 Minutes to explain it.
A mistake. Mary put some fragments of the bone in acid to dissolve away the outermost layer of mineral. But the acid worked too fast, and all the mineral dissolved away. Being a fossil, there should have been nothing left. But there was, and it was elastic, like living tissue.
This is the piece.
No.
She showed us video she took under the microscope.
That's really what happened?
Yes.
That's the dinosaur bone?
Without mineral now. That's what was left.
It looked like the soft tissue she would have expected to find if it had been modern bone. This was impossible. This bone was 68 million years old.
So you see this and you think, what? You
I didn't want to tell anybody.
They would be ridiculed,
Yes.
right?
And so I said to my technician, okay, do it again. I don't believe it.
And yet, in sample after sample, they were there. Things that looked suspiciously like flexible, transparent blood vessels. She finally mustered the courage to tell Jack.
She said she dissolved the bone away and there were blood vessels, and I was like shocked. I mean,
How could that be?
How could that be? That's right.
The things Mary was finding inside dinosaur bones,
Look at that.
blood vessels, and even what seemed to be intact cells, pose a radical challenge to the existing rules of science, that organic material can't possibly survive even 1 million years, let alone 68 million.
So very interesting, but look at the admission of bias. The real science, she said, the real science says these things can't even last 1 million. That's what the real science is, the law of science. But no, they have to be 68 million years old. That's not real science, that's a belief system. They're admitting they're actually willing to ignore the real science or explain it away in order to keep their belief system of millions of years. The other question is, we know that they're not nearly as old as people think. I think dinosaurs are actually very good evidence of a much younger age of the Earth than the evolutionists want us to believe. So what actually happened to them then? Well, I think humans were around. I've shown you examples of humans after the flood seeing dinosaurs, but some therefore must have survived. And then we've got this. No, please never use this picture. Please burn books like this. I don't normally approve of book reading. This is an acceptable. That's what I really wonder. I mean, what Paul Washer said about colouring a Noah's Ark picture. Most of the Noah's Ark pictures probably look like this. It's a mistake. I mean, there's no way a silly thing like that can fit all the animals. And then you've got the giraffe sticks out the chimneys, and they're all smiling and happy, and the world's being destroyed. They're happy. Okay. But in fact, we're told the dimensions of the ark is clear. 300 cubits. This is a cubit. See, mine's about 19 inches, but I mean, take it as 18 inches because it's conservative. So 300 cubits long, that is longer than a football field. And it's wide, 50 cubits wide. That would totally block 6 lanes of the interstate. And it's as high as a 4 or 5 story building. And that's how big it is. It's a huge thing. When you look at how humans are by comparison, you realise what a huge boat it really was. And you can certainly teach kids this in a way that's appropriate to children. There's no reason why we have to have these silly arcs that make the Ark of the Bible a fairy story. They're learning about legends elsewhere. The Bible is not a fairy story. It's actually real history. I mean, you think about, other things to think about is how much it would hold. Now, that actually calculated, and you know what semis are. What do you call the semi-trailer trucks, tractor trailers? All sorts of different names. I mean, articulated lorry or in Britain, okay. But each of these can carry over 300 sheep, weighing over 100 pounds each, okay. You've got decks on the semi-trailer, but it would take 340 to fill up the ark. You know, it's like, I think the congestion coming here from Georgia was terrible because you've got the semis and all the lanes blocking them up. I'm not supposed to do that, are they? But they do. So you see how big they are. But the ark is 340 times the volume of one of these. So if Noah had a fleet of semi-trailers, it would be 6 wide and half a mile long to load the ark. So the ark was big enough, okay, to hold animals. Another thing to think about is what animals were on there. So one thing to think about is that even though there are lots of dinosaur names, there probably weren't that many kinds of dinosaurs. The kinds had lots of variation, but not that many kinds. You see, there may have been only 50 kinds as opposed to hundreds of different genera, species, all those things. Like, for instance, the sauropods, the very big dinosaurs, when you look at the skulls of 2 of them with different names, they look almost identical. So I think there are varieties of the same kind. So one kind would be enough. Another thing is that they've given different names to babies and young adults as to the adults. And it seems that dinosaurs changed shape when they grew. So again, this is only one creature. So you haven't got 3 pairs, but only 1 pair for this. And it seems that maybe a third of dinosaur species may never have existed, but at different stages in the growth of other known dinosaurs. And this hornet is the jack on that video clip I showed, the jack hornet. Same hornet. Okay? And so we've got a lot more names that need to be on board. And when you go to things like animals that we know, just one cat kind. These are all different varieties of the cat kind. In fact, lions and tigers can interbreed to form a liger. If it's a male lion, female tiger is a liger. The other way around, it's called a tiger. So you've got these things here, a liger, and you've got these karma camel and llama. You've got there's the geek, which is goat, that's a bull, it's a beefalo. Okay, you've got all these things here. Caption. This is a zombie, horse and donkey, right? Okay, zebra and donkey. So they're all different. They're the same kind of creature. If they get into breed and have a hybrid, they're the same kind. We're writing exhaustively. Zebra, horse, geek, goat and sheep. Entertaining, really. What's this like? Probably pig and boar. So pigs on the what do you call that? Pizzly bear, grizzly, and polar bear, right? It's also called a roller bear, depending on which is which. Okay, so all these things, they're the same kind as your wolf, and that's a whale and a dolphin. They're the same breed. Not that dolphins went on the dark, but because only land creatures went on the ark. I mean, land, you don't have to rescue sea creatures from a flood, do you? So no fish, no dolphins. Okay, and also land vertebrate animals, which are animals with a backbone, so no congressmen. Another thing is that dinosaurs started off as eggs too. See, they're actually not big to start with. And there's a limit to how big an egg can be because you've got to actually have, the embryo has to have offspring come through. And the thing is, the bigger the egg, the thicker the shell, and you get the shell too thick and it stops the offspring coming through. So there's a limit to how much egg the egg can be. And also, they went through growth spurts. I mean, by looking at the dinosaur growth rings on the bone, both are growth rings, so from that you can tell how fast the animal grew. And every dinosaur that discovered has the same sort of growth pattern. They started off fairly slowly, then went through this enormous growth spurt, and then leveled off. So that Noah didn't have to take a 25-ton Apatosaurus, just take a 1-ton one that's 4 years old. A year later, he hasn't grown very much, and then off the ark, he can start to grow really, really fast. So when you worry about things like how they get the big dinosaurs on the ark, the answer is they weren't that big when they went on. They were pre-growth spurt. And how do you take care of things? Well, you see, Dutch farmers for centuries have known how to overwinter the animals, and they put them in stables, low maintenance techniques like a pot style, where all they do is pile on straw to absorb the waste products, you see, and it only really stinks when you have to wash it out at the end of winter. That's when it really stinks. Before that, it's actually not too bad. And this is called a Krupp style, which means it's a gutter in between. And again, we've got plenty of water, you've got a flood going on. So you've got no shortage of washing water to wash the stuff away, okay? And what you have is a filling station where you can actually have a water trough which is powered by a central filling station, also grain being poured down there. That's what they do. It's very low-tech ways of keeping the animals, low-tech and low-maintenance ways that we've known for a long time. So what I've done here is go through a few things about dinosaurs. I'm going to explain where I think what happened to them. And one example is the evolutionists of the junkie theory, where the plant eaters got stoned because of narcotic plants evolving. The meat eaters had nothing to hunt. And you got the asteroid impact theory. But again, the problem is the asteroid should have wiped out crocodiles and lizards and frogs, but why didn't it wipe out those things, but wiped out the dinosaurs, which they believed had ruled the earth for 100 million years? They need to wipe out the wrong thing. And here is an evolutionary admission, and we don't know the facts, so you can operate on your own intuition. And here's my favorite evolutionary mechanism here. It's the tobacco evolved, they all died of lung cancer. I think the real explanation is a flood rate. It really thinned down the dinosaur population, no question. You got the survivors, but then humans probably hunted them. And humans could do it because humans have the ability to make fire and traps and poison weapons, teamwork, intelligence. Think about humans versus whales. Now, whales were bigger than dinosaurs. They had the home turf advantage of the sea. Bigger, more intelligent, bigger brains, okay, but humans with handheld sailing ships and handheld harpoons on wooden sailing ships that almost wiped out the whales in the 19th century. When you think of the great American novel, Moby Dick, okay, humans usually beat the whales, except for Captain Ahab, okay, but most of the time they have fiction. So I think humans would beat the dinosaurs. And that's why you have dragon legends around the world that mention the dragon got killed, right? So that's what I think happened to them. So what can we summarize here? That dinosaurs tell us about God's creativity. Got the different created kinds with the ability of lots of variation within those kinds, not one kind evolving into another, but variation within the kinds. And the fall. The fall is what brought death into the world. And in particular the flood as well, because the flood is God's judgment on sins. Which is what killed the dinosaurs a lot. That's why you find the fossils, which means that God judges it. Very, very important. And about God's providence. God provided a way for humans to restart. So I think Noah is probably the second Adam, actually, because he restarted the human race after the flood. And the only way to be saved from the flood was getting on board the ark. That's the only way. It's a huge, very well designed, very seaworthy vessel. Okay, and the last thing is you could even say it tells us about the gospel, because you've got a connection between the ark is the only way of salvation. The only way of salvation from sin is Jesus Christ, who is called the door and the vine and the way, the truth, and the life. Okay, so that's the lessons we can learn from dinosaurs. And also, what I've done here, I've covered the sort of thing. This book has a chapter on dinosaurs and has a chapter on fitting the animals on the ark as well. So I've covered a couple of things there. But now it's a bit, I can have time to answer a few of your questions, maybe. And the only rule I have is that what you say must end in a question mark. Okay, who wants to ask a question then? Let's do it all. I think it's a stupid question, except the question is not asked, it should be asked.
How did the kangaroo get on the ark, and how did it get back to Australia?
There's a chapter we'll talk about that too. But the thing is, I don't believe Australia existed before the flood. The flood, it seems that before the flood you had one continent. It seems like the Bible tells Genesis 1 that waters were gathered into one place, the dry land appeared. So I think one pre-flood continent. Australia is after the flood. So where was the kangaroo before the flood? Well, that's an interesting question, because it's interesting how evolution is a puzzle. Fossils of the marsupials, the pouched animals, are not found where the living marsupials are, and they can't explain this geological switch they cause. So it's very good evidence that the kangaroos lived somewhere else before the flood than Australia. Now, of course, again, it wasn't one kangaroo that hopped back. Over generations. The other thing is, during the Ice Age, which happened after the flood, the water was locked up in the ice, and therefore sea levels were low. See, evolutionists understand sea levels were lower during the Ice Age too, so we believe that. And therefore there'd be land bridges for the animals to go from the Ark's resting place in the mountains of Ararat to go to Australia via land bridges often, you see. See, I think New Zealand wasn't connected to a land bridge, Australia was. I think that New Zealand seems to be even more isolated. So there's no snakes in New Zealand, you realise. Don't try and bring a snake to New Zealand, you'll be arrested, okay? There are no snakes in New Zealand. There are in Australia, lots of them, I think you saw. But yeah, over generations, the kangaroo would have hopped back. But it's like, I mean, did one rabbit hop from one side of Australia to the other? No, again, they breed like rabbits. And again, over generations, they filled Australia with more dangerous pests in Australia. And the foxes were released, and again, they spread out right throughout Australia too. But again, it's not one fox happening to it, it's a generation. And that's what happened with the animals, generations that came back to Australia. Yeah, that's explained in this book too. Okay? So not super question at all. Okay? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just wondering, based on the flood scenario and everything, how long would you estimate that it took to lay down the geological column with all the fossils and,
Well,
they say it's billions of years, but...
Well, I think, how long it took to lay down a lot of the rocks, I think the evidence is that they were laid down really quickly. But the fact that they got fossils in show you got very rapid formation, because it means they were laid down before the animal decayed. So it's a rapid formation of the layers. You had the wide extent of the layers. So you got some sort of happening that has had over a very wide extent. But also, there's very little time between the layers either. And we know that because we had dinosaur footprints, for instance. I'm trying to see if we can find a slide on the dinosaur footprints. You see, here's dinosaur footprints. Back in my home state of Australia, Queensland, Australia. Now the thing is, they weren't exploded. They had to take off the top layer of rock that was burying them. They took off tons and tons of rock material to expose these footprints. Now they believe the rock layers were millions of years apart. That's what they believe. The evolutionists believe. This layer is millions of years later. However, as soon as they removed that layer, the footprints started to wear away. They put a protective shell over it. Not good enough. So now they've got this conservation building that protects them from humidity changes, running water, that controls the temperature, stops animals running over them, stops humans running over them, and here's what it looks like from outside. So they had to build this conservation building to protect these footprints from being eroded away. So how could they have been exposed for millions of years to the elements when we know they can't be exposed even now? So what the answer is the animals escaping from the flood, running away, leaving footprints there, and the next day came and buried the footprints. Very rapidly cemented them in place, and then later they actually buried the creature that made it. There's an interesting thing here. It's an expert in paleontology, Dr. Marcus Ross, but a very interesting thing he's discovered. The pattern is footprints first, then supposedly millions of years later we have the animals that made them. That doesn't make any sense. What makes sense is that the animals escaping from the flood, leaves the footprints there, they're buried, and eventually the flood catches up with the animal in a higher layer, right? But it doesn't make sense. Millions of years, then you have the animal that made it millions of years later, the animal lasted millions of years. No, it doesn't work that way. But what happens, it shows the layers were formed really, really rapidly within the lifetime of the animal that made its footprints. I mean, the same type of animal that made its footprints is always millions of years later, according to the evolutionary time frame. And this actually shows rapid formation of layers and very little time between layers. Okay, that's why we think it's a flood.
Would you say that would be, I mean, the flood was like basically a year.
Yes.
So would you say that that may have taken place during that year, or do you
Yes,
think?
most of it was during that year.
And then maybe some a little afterwards?
Yeah, I think mammoth fossils were post-flood, right towards the end of the Ice Age. I think the mammoth fossils that we see were not during the flood, but during the Ice Age. So they would be about 700 years after the flood. But I'd say the majority of the record will be laid down during the flood, I think, yes.
Do you think there are fossils being made today?
Are there fossils being made today? There probably are, but I really couldn't tell you for sure. I'm not sure if anyone really knows how to make a fossil. We sort of know how not to make a fossil, but I think we're not exactly sure the ingredients to make a fossil. But there seems to be some very strong silica waters that are fossilizing, or at least mineralizing things. And mineralization can happen. I think there's even rapid petrification of wood happening. But I wouldn't be surprised to see any animal fossils being formed today. It really requires, I mean, if I wanted to bury my pet dog or something, I'd probably have to cement top over it. That's the best way to do it. But to get a fossil, I'm not sure about that. Sorry, yeah. Yes, sir.
I have a question. It has to do more with fish than with dinosaurs, but the fish died during the flood.
Oh, yes.
Whales.
Absolutely did. Well, because it's a very violent thing, so that's why we have lots and lots of fish fossils. In fact, more fish fossils than land vertebrate fossils, actually. And the most common vertebrate is actually a fish, the fossil. 95% of fossils are shellfish, and of the vertebrate fossils, most of them are fish. Okay, I think about 1% of fossils are land vertebrate animals. Now, this is actually another chapter of the answers book I can actually go through since you asked about fish, and that is how we get freshwater fish and saltwater fish surviving the flood. And the answer to that is this phenomenon called a halocline, where your salt water is denser than fresh water, and therefore the fresh water can persist in a layer above the salt water and mix very, very slowly. That's one example of that. You see, have you ever been to Israel and seen the Dead Sea and tried to sink in the Dead? You can't sink in the Dead Sea, it's so dense there. So here's one example of how this would explain freshwater and saltwater fish survival for some time. And also, I've been to Underwater World. It's one of the attractions in Queensland in Australia. There's one tank there that actually had a freshwater fish and saltwater fish together. How did that happen? The answer was they were acclimatized gradually to different salinities until they could both be in the same tank. Yes?
It's obvious that nowadays there are the different species of animals exist in different places on the earth.
Yes, indeed.
Is there any biblical evidence that Noah, after the flood, put these different animals in different places?
I think they would have gone there by themselves. And no, didn't have to put them anywhere. They would have wandered away from the mountains of Ararat, and that's how they would have got. And as I say, during the Ice Age, there would have been land bridges where they could go across to what's now oceans in between, but there wouldn't have been oceans in between during the Ice Age. And during the Ice Age, not everything was icy. There were certainly warm parts that the animals could have moved. Especially near the ocean. The ocean, being a warm ocean, would have kept the margins of the continents fairly warm. So you have tracks for animals to walk from over generations from one part to the other. I'll try to find that for you. So here is the migration paths, okay, of animals. You see, Ararat is near the junction of three continents, Asia and Europe and Africa. So you've actually got these paths which would have been preserved by land bridges during the Ice Age. That's how evolutionists believe they got there too. You see, evolutionists believe that you had these crossings during the Ice Age over land bridges. So why can't creationists support that as well?
When do you put the Ice Age?
Sorry?
When do you put the Ice Age?
The Ice Age would have been just after the flood, I think, because here is what you need to get an Ice Age. I think people misunderstand what's needed for an Ice Age. They think that all you need to do is cool the Earth down, but that's actually not correct. I'll try and show you why that is. How would you get an Ice Age? So here is the Ice Age, and you look at the ice covering a lot of North America, a lot of northern Europe, and also you have the South Island of New Zealand. Anyone who's been to New Zealand knows about that. Australia, not so much. You've got the South America covered, you see, Antarctica, obviously. Okay, not quite so much in Siberia, which is interesting. But how do you get the ice age? Because if you cool the Earth down, you can't get the ice up on the continents, because ice means snow. You need snow to drop the snow dropping to form the ice, which means you have to have clouds to drop the snow. And to get the clouds, you have to have evaporation. How do you get evaporation if the ocean's cold? Now, the only way to do it is if you have a warm ocean and cool land. And this is what the flood would do. It would actually have the flood pouring fountains of the great deep, lava, hot water into the ocean, raising the ocean temperature, but also volcanic eruption would produce ash and aerosols, which are known to reflect sunlight and therefore cool the earth down. So it was actually the Ice Age, it would have been the inevitable result of a global flood, producing warm ocean, a cool continent, and producing the Ice Age over several centuries. In that time, the ash would dissipate, oceans would cool off, and therefore the Ice Age would end. And that's where you time the woolly mammoth fossils, probably towards the end of the Ice Age. So it's actually quite an interesting thing. So there's a chapter in that book on the Ice Age as well. And a chapter on saltwater fish and freshwater fish. Yes, sir.
Since people are talking about the movement of the animals and everything, could you talk a little bit about continental movement in addition to land bridges?
That's another chapter of the book. There's three books. What we think happened is that one continent broke up. It's actually a third model called catastrophic plate tectonics, where you have especially the phenomenon called subduction, where one plate goes beneath another plate because it's been created as being very warm and very heavy. It actually has a tendency to sink below another plate, and you've got lateral movements doing that. And so this is what we think is actually probably happening flood at a much higher rate than today. So we see continental drift happening today very, very slowly, but it would be a continental sprint towards at the time of the flood. That's what we're seeing here. And then we also see evidence that this has happened because we find that we look at the heat, we measure the temperature of these subduction zones, and what do we find? We find they have not heated up to the surrounding mantle yet. You see, if it had been there slowly and gradually over millions of years, we expect that rock down there to have heated up to the surrounding rock over such a vast time. But in fact, it's much cooler than the surrounding rock, which means it hasn't had a chance to heat up yet. And this is consistent with it going down really quickly and only a few thousand years ago and not millions of years ago. So that's what we think is the basic cause of the flood, is that subduction happened really, really quickly, and what would happen, open up fissures that would generate lots of lava, which would evaporate water, and which would fall down as that torrential rain for 40 days and 40 nights, but also the movement would push water on the continents and bury things on the continents, and eventually would even out the surface, so the whole globe would be flooded. Now, to answer another question in that book about how did the water, where did the water come from? Well, in fact, you only need the water in the ocean to cover the whole Earth. And see, if the Earth was flattened down completely, so the mountains were smoothed out and the ocean bottoms were smoothed out, so everything was totally uniform, the water in the sea, the oceans, could cover the Earth to about 2 miles, 3 kilometers deep. There's plenty of water to cover the Earth. All you need to have is a more even surface, and the water would cover the Earth. Maybe time for one more question. I want you to get a chance at least get some of the books we have there, like the Creation Answer book, which, as I've shown you, is very useful to answer the questions you guys have. See? Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that the flood has any lasting effects on modern day climate?
Well, that's a very interesting thing. I mean, it's interesting how often I get asked about climate change and all that. Was it global warming? I forget what they seem to change it. I think the flood probably did have an effect. I think what we're seeing, the flood, you have the Ice Age, and you have a damped oscillation from that very intense climate change, climate happening during the flood, during the Ice Age. So you're having these oscillations in the climate that we see now, and therefore I'm not as worried about global warming as some people think I should be, because you go to history, you have a warm time during the Roman period, and you have a warm medieval warm period, they call it, where they could grow much better crops with longer growing cycle. Greenland had a bit of greenery to it, grapes in England. So you had a medieval warming period, which is a very productive time for the growth. So I think science began in the medieval period, the so-called Dark Age, which is not dark at all. Then you have the cooling down and less crop cycle, you go to a little ice age, and that's where you get famines and plagues happening, and then it seems like we're probably coming out of a little ice age. So I think that's probably what's happening. I just don't think a lot of that previous warming was due to lots of fossil fuel usage, which they think is a problem now. But I think we've got evidence that there'll be natural things. I'm not saying we should be we should be ridiculous or anything. I'm just saying that I think a lot of the concerns have been a bit overrated, a bit overdrawn. I think we're actually seeing, I think the United States is actually having fewer emissions because we're burning more, we're finding more natural gas which burns cleaner than diesel and the iron, because natural gas has more hydrogen to carbon ratio, so the product is water more than carbon dioxide, and that's I think why America has become greener. Natural gas burning. I mean, don't need to sign the Paris Agreement to actually become greener because of the way the free market can work. That's sort of my personal opinion. I'm not saying I'm speaking as a CMI speaker. I'm sort of taking the CMI hat off. I can talk about global warming. Okay, don't put it back on. Yes, sir.
You also have an answer in your book about the core drills, what they do on the polar, but they say they go back 650,000 years. Show reoccurring ice ages.
Do they? I think what you've got is actually the same ice age advancing and retreating is what I think you really do have there. I think it's not what they think, and a lot of those cores are somewhat extrapolated or interpolated there, because we've got very good evidence like this one of very rapid formation of ice in historical times. We used to have a book called Ice Cores on the Age of the Earth, that they actually went into that more deeper than we survived. So we actually now just try and say the main points in our Creation Answers book about ice core. And also creation.com has an article on the ice core issue too. That might be a good time to stop now, actually, because I know it's getting time and you're only got this place for a certain amount of time. So,